and salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 underrated historical romances that I think you should read. Okay, at the time of me filming this, it is the Historical Romance Readathon, which is everybody's favorite readathon. I just absolutely adore all the love that historical romance is getting. So I thought it would be fun to talk about a couple books that I think don't get enough love, and I highly recommend. I always get asked to film historical romance recommendations, and these are my favorite videos to film. If you guys are really into historical romance, I just posted my historical romance collection. I literally showed you every single book that I have on the shelf behind me. I went through all of the covers and the step backs and the titles, everything. So if you want just a full-on historical romance video, I will link that one down below. I try to keep this video relatively quick, but you guys know I like to chat. So let's just get started. So the first book that I want to mention is actually a series, and it is the Wicked Wallflowers series by Christy Caldwell. I have talked about the series on my channel on my best of 2020 books, my Sammy Awards, I called them. I gave this an award of the most underrated book series. I really enjoyed this series, and I just feel like nobody is talking about it. Like, where is the love for Christy Caldwell? By the way, I think all of the books that I'm about to mention are available on Kindle Unlimited. If you have that service, you guys can get the books there. So that is really exciting. I just really enjoy Christy Caldwell. I first discovered Spitfire, which is actually the 5th and last book in the series. The series is called Wicked Wallflowers. It has 5 total books, kind of all centered around a family, the Kaloran family, and some people who work for them as well. I read the books out of order, but I would recommend reading them in order because they do all connect. That this entire series is available on Kindle Unlimited, but so are the audiobooks, and I do really enjoy the audiobooks. The guy that narrates them, I just love his voice. I can listen to it all day. Let me just go ahead and run through the series for you. I've read all but one of the books from the series. So the first book is The Hellion, and this book follows our main character Cleo, who is by far probably one of the most strong-willed heroine I have ever read about. I just really enjoyed how tough and spirited she was. The Hellion is the perfect name for her. And this is an enemies to lovers romance, and you guys know that I'm typically not someone who likes enemies to lovers, but I adored this book. It kind of has a Romeo Juliet retelling vibe because it's about 2 families who are enemies and they don't really get along, and then our main characters fall for each other. What ends up happening is our heroine's brother is determined to marry her off to a nobleman, to someone with a title. The entire family owns a gambling hell, and they really want to make their way into polite society, and they plan to do that by marrying a nobleman or someone with a title. So the enemy family owes them a favor, and our main character Cleo actually ends up staying with them as she enters her season into London. Our main character Rafe just does not trust her at all. He ends up being her bodyguard to make sure she doesn't get in any trouble, and it follows their very heated enemies to lovers romance. The steam was perfect. The chemistry was perfect. I really enjoyed Cleo's backstory. I would say that this entire series does have some trigger warnings, so please check Goodreads if you are interested in reading this series. Not all of the books, but I would say 3 of them have trigger warnings for sexual assault or child abuse. If you need trigger warnings, please check the reviews. But yeah, that's the first book. The second book is The Vixen, but this one was so heart-wrenching to see what our heroine had to go through. I did enjoy the book, but I felt for our heroine so much. This also follows a sister of the Kaloran family, and I don't want to tell you guys too much of the premise because the second book really relies on what the first book's conflict was. So in short, our heroine has to make a match, she has to get married, but she ends up stumbling upon a childhood friend of hers that she thought was dead. Being a private detective who is following this case that is intertwined into her family's gambling hell, and it follows their romance. Next one is The Governess, which is the book that I am currently listening to right now, and it's kind of a friends to lovers romance. And then we have The Blue Stocking. This is the one book that I haven't read in the series. It features another sister of the Kaloran family. You get her story sprinkled throughout all of the other books, so I'm very excited to get to this one. And then the last book is The Spitfire, which for some reason is the first book I read. The reason I read this book is because it has a virgin cinnamon roll hero, which you guys know is my absolute favorite thing of all time. So far, this has still remained my favorite book in the series. I know it's the last one, But guys, it's so worth it. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. I highly, highly recommend it. Basically, it follows our main character, Clara, whose dream is to open an opera house. She ends up stumbling across our hero because he is being beaten in the streets of London, and she ends up taking him into her home and nursing him back to health. She is an escort, or a lady of the night, if you will, so she definitely has some resentment for people with titles and noblemen. He is a duke, but she does not know that, so they end up parting ways. A few months later, he accidentally sends her a cease and desist letter to close her opera house. He is a part of Parliament. He doesn't realize that he sends her that letter, and a lot of tension happens. She gets very angry, and it follows their romance again. He's a virgin cinnamon roll hero, which we just don't get enough of in historical romance. Like, if you're going to read any book in the series, read this one. I know I said you have to read the books in order, but I feel like you can read this one out of order. Okay, this one is so good. Okay, the next book that I would say is underrated is actually one I literally just finished this morning, and that is Hammer and Tongs by Laura Kinsey. This is the first book in the Chance Unlimited series. Laura Kinsey I ended up discovering because someone recommended it to me on Instagram, and I recommended it to me with Amanda from Talk About Swoon. She has an amazing Instagram. I highly, highly recommend following her. She does these posts that are like specific book recommendations. So she did a post about diverse historical romance. The one she did most recently is romances that have the trope of being snowed in or forced proximity. I know she did like a curvy girl trope. She is amazing, and the amount of work that she puts into her book recommendations is out of this world. So I highly recommend following her. I will link her Instagram down below. Like I said, this is a series, and this follows our main character, who is the head of like this horse racing empire that they call Chance Limited. He's definitely a self-made man, and he has created an empire for himself with horse racing and gambling and all of this stuff. He is definitely someone who always has to be in control, and he's responsible for not only his family but a lot of his employees as well. Then he meets our heroine, who is dressing as a guy and gets hired to be one of his stable boys. She is nursing for his horses, taking care of his horses, and she also wants to be a writer. What I like about the story, and what makes it more unique than some other historicals that I've read, is that our character does have she, her pronouns, but she prefers to dress in men's clothing and kind of be the dominant one in the relationship. So like I said, our hero is always used to being in control and always being in charge of someone. He is definitely like the alpha male in public, but in private he is more comfortable with having our heroine kind of take charge in the bedroom. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of the relationship, because the way she took care of him was just so beautiful, and you can definitely tell like she was the missing puzzle piece to his life. This book did focus more on their relationship. The only thing I will say about this book is I wish it focused a little bit more on the existential plot and problem that they have, but honestly, it was a really good book. It's pretty short, so you can get through it pretty quickly. Laura Kinsey has a ton of books on Kindle Unlimited. I know that there is a sapphic romance that I'm really excited to read. The last book that I want to talk about is actually a recommendation that you guys gave me, and it's A Beastly Kind of Earl by Mia Vinci. This is part of the Long Hope series. I think that's what the series is called. I actually can't remember. I haven't read the other 2 books in the series, but I did read this one. I plan to film like a whole video on it, and the footage got all messed up, but I'm talking about it now. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. If you guys like a sunshine heroine and a grumpy hero, you guys will love this book. You will love this book. This is our main character, Thea, who is just, I love her so much. She's such a prankster. She likes to prank people. She's very sassy and intelligent, and I just loved reading about her. Main character Thea is an outcast of her family and of polite society. We find out that a few men actually ruined her reputation based on lies and jealousy and things that didn't happen, so she is pretty convinced to clear her name. She wants to write like a tell-all story about what really happened to her. Her sister ends up being betrothed to an earl that she doesn't want to marry, so Thea comes and helps out her sister and actually pretends to be her sister, so her sister doesn't have to marry the guy, and her sister can go marry the guy that she actually wants to. So Thea pretends to be her sister and has like this elaborate plan to trick the Duke into marrying her so that she can like write her story and tell the truth and, you know, live her own life. Well, the Earl also has plans of his own, and the only reason he's marrying is because he can only get his inheritance if he marries. So they both kind of have their own reasons to getting into the marriage. They're both tricking and deceiving each other. It follows their relationship. Like I said, Thea is such a sunshine heroine, and our hero is such a grumpy hero, and I just loved their chemistry together. So if you guys like Beauty and the Beast retellings, you probably really like this one. Hopefully I introduced you to some new historical romances that you could read. Let me know if there are any underrated romances that I should read. Leave them down below. I'm sure there are a ton. So I'll probably do like a part 2 to this video. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the absolute world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you next time.